Hello, Stephanie Joy with All Things Social Security. We had a Q&A with a short little clip discussion on a particular topic. So I'm going to attach it for you here. It might be something that you're interested in if you clicked on this header. And following that, we're going to go through it a little bit more. So just wanted to give you the heads up. This is where it started from, and then we'll have the bigger discussion right after. All right, chat with you later. Bye-bye. User Wendy says, if I'm receiving SSD and have a private disability policy, will that pay for a year, then stop, then we'll kick back in? That depends on what your policy is about. You're asking about the details of your own LTD policy? I would have no idea. You'd have to read the policy. They're all very different. Does Social Security access the figure and cut SS? No. Social Security does not get reduced due to any private disability policy. So if you had an LTD policy that your employer bought for you in case you got disabled, SSD doesn't take away from that for the private. Your LTD policy, your contract, your agreement with them might have been, and you have to look at it to find out that if you win SSD for the same month we gave you or are going to give you LTD, we have an offset so that you don't get both. We'll give you, you're still going to get the full amount that LTD pays you if it's higher than SSD, but we get to take the SSD from you. You have to send it to them. They say that's your contract. Whether you're going to comply with your contract or not, that's another whole nother issue. We have debts of all kinds. Some people pay them, some people don't. Some people bankrupt them. So it really depends, So I can't really speak to what your policy says, but I suggest you get a copy of it and you read it. And I would make sure you get a copy of it as it was initially accepted, I suppose. There's a good chance you have the offset, but it's on the LTD side. They're going to demand money from you as a creditor. They're your creditor, like your credit card companies are, like your whatever. You put your credit card companies, let's put it that way. If they're going to want their money back and you're going to decide if you have it or not. If you don't pay them back and they were going to be paying you another $300 on top of your SSD every month, sometimes it's a good idea to pay them back. If you're going to be getting that $300 for the rest of your life, it might be worth it, as well as complying with your contract. Jennifer says, LTD, I'm still on, is that through 2028? So is yours going to end in 2028? Is it end in 2028? That's only less than 2 years away, or about 2 years away, Jennifer. So how much more above your SSD amount will you be getting? Is that 2 years left of that amount very notable? Is it notable? I'm not suggesting that anybody breach a contract. If you have bills, I'm only suggesting that LTD is not necessarily more important bill than a credit card debt you have or that new roof you need. I think there's a lot of thought that's got to go into it, complicated, right? Jennifer says, I have to pay most of it back. Yes, under your contract. Kind of like your credit card says you got to pay us back. Kind of like your roofing company, if you finance that, says you got to pay us back, right? And then when there's not enough money to pay everybody back, somebody has to go to the wayside. Who's it going to be? Right? And then you can get bad credit and stuff. Because if it's big, they're probably going to report it to the creditor, the bureaus. It's not the end of the world. Bankruptcy is not the end of the world either. How many months would LTD be? I was approved from April 20. Well, if you're getting LTD for every single month that you're getting SSD in hindsight, then every single month is going to be offset. If you have an offset term, and going forward, there's going to be the offset. So that means that you're going forward. If you're getting say 2,000 in SSD, and they were giving you 2,300, they're only going to pay you the 300 going forward. The 2,000 is still going to come from SSD. That's not at risk. It's just where you get that little bonus from LTD going forward. If you don't pay your back bill, they're probably going to be like, well, then we're not paying you the 300 because that's going to go. That would make sense. I would expect that. So then you just have the 2,000 from SSD. Again, do the math. Just know what you're doing before you do it, I say. So you can weigh, it's not a crime to be unable to pay a bill. It gives you bad credit, usually. Some people don't want to be harassed and they file for bankruptcy if it's a big enough amount too. Once they file for bankruptcy, they can't be harassed anymore. So it's all kinds of things to worry about and to think about. If you have a lot of debt and you've won your case, what are you gonna do now? Are you gonna give up that $70,000 in back benefits to be a happy payer? Or are you gonna be like, no, my new roof, and God, my roof needs to be redone because I'm gonna lose my house, my mortgage is behind. Wouldn't you pay your mortgage first? I don't know. Everyone has to answer the question for themselves. I'm just throwing it out there. Hey, so if the subject matter of the video you just listened to is of interest and you want more on it, stay tuned. Here's another one about the same topic, but a little bit different. Bye now. Hi. Okay, this particular short video is directed specifically for claimants or recently won individuals with Title II benefits who are also beneficiaries of long-term disability contracts. This could be an LTD policy that an employer provided you. So when you became unwell or your conditions, your medical conditions prevented you from working, that policy covered you. The reason being, there is a very good chance, particularly if this is an employer provided policy versus one that you bought for yourself because you just happen to have great foresight, unlike the rest of us. If you have this policy, it most likely, I'm finding in this day and age, maybe not so much a few decades ago, but now they all seem to have an offset provision. This is what gave you lower premiums to buy that policy or your employer to buy that policy for you. So what it says is, yes, we pay you the amount that, is mathematically whatever you were supposed to get. Maybe it was 60 or 70% of your salary. So let's say it's $4,000. We pay you that if we, the insurance carrier, finds you disabled under our criteria, which of course is different from Social Security disability criteria, but you must file for Social Security disability. And if you prevail, and if you don't file, they will cut you off because you haven't met the terms of your contract. So you got to look at your terms of your specific contract with the carrier. If you prevail on your Social Security disability claim, you have to let us know, and there will be an offset because whatever you get from Social Security disability, we are going to take away from the $4,000. So if you get $2,000 from Social Security disability and we're getting $4,000 total from us, now we only have to give you $2,000 to make up for the $2,000 that they're not giving you. So you get the total of $4,000 still, but it's going to be between the two sources. This saves the long-term disability insurance company money. It also saved your employer or you premium because not having that offset would obviously be more expensive. So people tend to know about it because they do tell their carrier that they filed for SSD. And in fact, a lot of times their carrier directs them to a company that will file it for them. And they either stick with that company or they move on to a lawyer or a non-attorney rep who does it, takes the case to the end and only gets paid if they prevail, versus some of the ones that take it from a carrier. They're paid by the carrier just to file it, and it's not necessarily, and to meet the minimum criteria of doing so, but are not relying on winning to get paid. So there's a little difference. That's why some people prefer to not use that. But in any event, if you have an LTD policy, you probably were told by your carrier, hey, you've got to file for SSD, and then you got to tell us when you win. If you forget that they told you that, if you don't keep track of your mail and your obligations, you're going to find yourself in a jam when you win your Social Security disability. And if you win back benefits, you have to know that you're going to have to pay any of those back benefits that coincided with the same months that you received LTD benefits. You are going to have a contractual obligation to pay those back to the LTD carrier. And any months prospectively that the LTD carrier doesn't know that you won and they keep continuing to send you the full amount, say it was $4,000, they're going to want that back too. That's a contractual provision because you have a business contract with them. There are other things you could have that this has nothing to do with your Social Security people. But if you have a divorce agreement where you agree that something's going to change if you prevail on your Social Security disability, that's on you too. I mean, that's not on anybody else. It's not on Social Security. So you have to make sure that you keep everyone apprised and do what you have to do with your own business, okay? Or you're going to find yourself subject to a claim by, in this case that we're talking about, the LTD carrier that you owe them money. Now, if they've stopped paying you because your long-term disability benefits were for a term only and that term is over, they don't have a lot of leverage against you to get you to conform to the contract. And you might have some negotiation leeway with them. And you might want to consider consulting with an LTD attorney. Your Social Security disability attorney is a different kind of attorney. So take note. You might need to, just like you would be going to a divorce attorney for something divorce related, you wouldn't be going to your Social Security disability attorney. Same thing with LTD issues. If you have an LTD policy that is continuing to pay you for a term or forever, I don't know, after you've won your SSD case, but just with that offset, that could still be important to play nice in that sandbox, because even though they're cutting back now on what they're going to pay you, because they're taking the offset from their own termed offset that they've decided is going to be in the policy and that you agree to, out of what they have to pay you, they still would be paying you extra on top of the SSD. So that would be their leverage to get you to pay back that overpayment that they paid you when you were getting the full amount instead of the offset amount from them. If you don't have further term left, that's a business decision for you. And I would recommend you consult with somebody on that, because paying that bill, you have probably a multitude of bills that you have to decide every month what takes priority. Obviously, and goal is to budget down, and hopefully you were doing that when your claim was pending, to prepare for if and when you had income, but now it's different from working, of course. So take all those things into consideration. That is just another debtor's bill, just like a credit card bill or anything else, in theory. So you prioritize getting it paid or not paid is up to you, but the ramifications will be yours as well. And again, if they have an obligation to you in the future to pay, they will get their money from you one way or another. Either you pay them back on the spot when they ask for it, or they will withhold those future payments until that debt is paid. But if their term goes longer than it would take to pay that debt back, and then you'd start getting a net back again, you might want to think of that and not burn that bridge. All things to talk about with an LTD attorney. I just wanted to give you the heads up, because once in a blue moon, we get somebody who did not notify their carrier when they won. They notified them when they filed, like the carrier told them to, but then for whatever reason, I think it's mostly just forgetting. Maybe it's wishful thinking, because it's nice having the double income, but the ramifications are going to get you. So putting your head in the sand isn't helpful. If you have an LTD policy and you're getting paid on it, you need to take note. You must, or you're going to live to regret it. So take that home. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me, and good luck. I'm glad you won your case. Bye-bye now.